Good morning. This is Heidi Meyers, Immigration and Economic Sanctions Attorney. Today we're going to talk about how is it that the United States gets jurisdiction over non-U.S. companies and persons for violating economic sanctions regulations. So how is it that the U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC, of the U.S. Treasury Department can impose more than $1 billion on foreign companies doing business outside of the United States for violating U.S. economic sanctions? One way the U.S. imposes jurisdiction is if the transaction is in U.S. dollars. So we're going to take as our example the European Union, which is doing a great deal of business now with China. So China has become the European Union's largest trading partner. And in Europe itself, the biggest trading partners with China are Germany, France, I think Italy, Switzerland. Okay, so our example will be a German company that is exporting textile machinery to a Chinese company in China. So it's a German company owned by Germans, and they're exporting to China to a Chinese company. The German company asks the Chinese company to pay them in US dollars. So there are basically three banks involved. There's a Chinese bank, Chinese correspondent bank in China, and there's the German bank of the supplier in Germany. So the Chinese bank has to send instructions to a US bank to deposit the US dollars into the German account of the supplier in Europe. So since the transaction is in US dollars, it has to go through a US bank, a US financial institution, and in that way, OFAC says it has jurisdiction over that company that violated US economic sanctions. So that's one example. And this is very important now because the U.S. has imposed very broad-based economic sanctions on Xinjiang and also on China for violating the human rights of the Uyghurs, for forced labor, for the internment camps, whereas while the European Union does have some sanctions on top Chinese officials, it does not have the kind of broad-based sanctions that the United States does, although that's being debated now. It's being debated in Italy and Germany. As of now, there aren't all those restrictions that we have here in the United States. So that's very relevant in terms of how OFAC can say, well, we're imposing huge amounts of penalties on these EU companies for violating US economic sanctions. Another way that OFAC can get jurisdiction over, say, a European company or a non-US company is if the foreign company uses US-based software or servers located in the United States. So I'm going to just read to you a little bit from this example. So in February 2020, OFAC announced a $7.8 million settlement agreement with the Geneva-based Société Internationale de Télécommunications Aéronautique, CETA, for violations of the global terrorism sanctions regulations. And they asserted jurisdiction. So the only U.S. connection was the provision of U.S. origin software. That was the only connection, was that the company abroad was providing U.S. origin software. So the extraterritorial reach of U.S. regulations is very, very broad-based, and it can involve any small contact with the U.S. So, for example, a non-U.S. person who visits the United States, say on a business trip, automatically becomes a U.S. person for economic sanctions violations purposes. All right, so that's it for today, just a short talk. Thank you very much. I'm Heidi Meyers, attorney, Law Office of Heidi J. Meyers, 11 Broadway, Suite 925, New York, New York, 10004. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a good day.